it's on, much less what shelf it's on.
So do you have a description of what we're actually hiring, or what their responsibilities are?
This 2 hours here?
Whatever we're doing with the library, because to me right now it sounds like we're just trying to fill some hours, but really nobody really knows what they're truly going to be doing. And that to me is, you need to come up with, whether it's a group of people that sit down and figure out, okay, this is step one, we have to be here first, and then we work our way down. We should almost have it in writing, this is what we need, because, we're thinking the 5 hours or whatever is all we need, and we're basically being told now, well, no way, that's not enough. We need almost like a full-time position, which, last meeting we said 15 hours, and I'm thinking the 15 hours is all we needed, so I think we should really somehow have a committee or somebody create something so that you come up with an idea. To me, I might be wrong, but you're looking at hiring somebody or interviewing somebody in 2 days to give her what responsibility.
I think that the library committee was good at explaining what needs to be done, and I think it's Mr. Schmidt's responsibility to make sure that he puts together what job duties and responsibilities of those 2 hours it is through what the library committee has done.
And we took that when we met last time. We kind of broke it a little bit down.
We're not getting. If I'm hearing what I'm hearing, we're not getting even close to what we need.
Right, because if you remember how long the spreadsheet was, that was a 2-page spreadsheet of what we want, and the very first item was 15 hours. That's just maintaining books coming in and out.
So you're really not going to have anybody that touch the books or input the books in the back,
right,
or
because that was
teach
like,
kids how to check out books.
Right.
That's going to be something we're going to worry about next year then.
Well, no, not
Was
next
that something
year.
that Mrs. W, what is Mrs. W doing right now? You said how much is her time?
Hour and a half a day.
An hour and a half a day. So what is she doing?
She checks out books in and out books on Wednesday and Thursday, and then reshelves on Friday, Monday, and Tuesday.
Plus, she's also right now going through and referencing materials to see what we can keep and what needs to go. So she's got a little, at least I believe that she is doing that as well. So there are other. And what our hope was originally when we were told that Sarah was going to be taking part of that position was that she would be more of that management person maybe and take ownership of the whole process, delegate to someone to get those books entered, train them to do that. But it doesn't seem to us, from what we understand, that she even has the training to do that herself. Yeah. So, somewhere things are getting lost in translation here, and we're from our standpoint, from Parents for Education and Library Group, doesn't seem like we're improving it.
I think what we'll do then is we'll add this to it as another agenda item, library update, and then you can tell us where we're at with this position.
And what are our plans for the remainder of this year and moving forward? I mean, really, if we need to, we need to get an idea here of what we really want to do with job descriptions, with hours needed, with how much that's going to cost us.
Okay.
I think part of that can even be volunteer time. If you got people that are going to volunteer to come in and do stuff, that can be part of the whole plan. You might be able to get somebody, 5 different people to come in 1 day a week for 2 hours.
So on the agenda items,
That's a good point too, and we have talked about that a little bit. We have people who are willing to fill some of these volunteer
But we need
things.
to manage, someone to manage.
Right, somebody has to do the overall part though, because, Amy and I are doing the best that we can with recommendations based on a little bit that we're in here. We're not in the school building all day. We don't know how many people are actually using the library and what they're using it for. Things that we would do might be changed by that, just because we don't know that, which is why we're really looking for the school to take that initiative, make those plans, and it would be great if in January we could see some of those goals, that within the next month we're going to have half of those books entered, or 3 boxes entered, or something, to see that those things are going to happen.
Well, let's get somebody to at least fill those 2 hours first.
Yeah, well, one of the problems with creating that plan, or even with Sarah, is trying to figure out how long it does take to do reshelving, or check in and check out, or different library tasks that we have. I don't really know how long it takes to do some of that stuff based on the number of books checked out and different things like that. So, like you said, if we can fill that 2 hours and start with that, and I can kind of gauge that and use that to help determine where we want to be.
So what we'll do is we'll put it on the agenda for next month to see where we're at, and we'll just keep chipping away on this thing, you know, and hopefully we can get it to a point where we're gonna be satisfied, we're gonna be satisfied with where we're at. Alice, when we were talking about making this a full-time position, she looked like she was sucking on a lemon for a while, so.
Oh, no.
So it kind of made me a little nervous, but I think we're gonna be able to do this as a full-time position the way it looks, so. Not the librarian, but this position as we're looking at now.
Well, and just to be clear too, we understand, I mean, full-time would be great. If we could get a full-time position, we'd be really excited about that. But we understand that that's gonna be hard to do. So, but we want part-time people to be taking some ownership of that, not just part-time people to shelve books, I guess is kind of where I'm getting at here. So we can hopefully still get some of those things going while staying within budget constraints and the dollars that we have to spend for that.
Mr. Schmidt and I, when we talked, our thing is we were looking at the two people, as one person becoming more of a, say, workhorse runner, stuff, taking care of those little things, and the other person becoming more of the bigger picture, starting to do that. That's our goal of that. And then we gotta see if they actually are capable of doing that. And if they aren't, then we probably have to go back to step one on that for next year. And if they are, then we'll have to look at how we can maybe bond that or make it more of ownership is what it's called. That's what we talked about as kind of our goal with this right now.
Great. Anything else with that? So we're gonna be putting it on our agenda, see where we're at next month. Okay? And now we wanna move on to the I-Bailey report,
Yep.
for the audit.
Brian is here for my
Brian,
ability.
what is your last name? Okay, and, so is there anything negative or bad that we have to worry about so we can go home?
I can make it as fast or as slow as you
Perfect.
want.
For me.
You guys some stuff.
So,
Go for it, buddy.
I think everyone should have kind of a handout. There's gonna be some big cumbersome bound financial statements.
Yep.
We, tried to summarize everything that's gonna be in those bound copies and do a couple page summary. So, we'll cover the summary quick.
Thank you.
So, if you have any questions while I go through it, stop me, ask me. If you don't, we'll just kind of run through it quick.
You can go ahead, Ron.
Okay.
Go for it.
The first one, the first page is state aid receivable. We show this graph in there, as a cash flow purpose. The state usually delays payment to the school district. So delayed payments usually mean that the district has to do some aid anticipation borrowing. So this graph just shows how much the state owes the district, about $1 million at the end of the fiscal year the district is waiting to collect. And the district had aid anticipation borrowing about $835,000. So it just kind of ties in why the district has to borrow money that's waiting for the state to pay up its kind of balance due. The good news is it looks like next year's payout is supposed to be a little bit better. This year was about 64%, 65%. I think maybe it might be up to 82% last time I said, so.
From now until spring possibly, until they maybe
Right.
change it again.
So that can change, so. The next page is kind of the overall summary by fund. The general fund balance increased about $79,442. Food service increased $6,200. Community service decreased $17,668. Debt service increased $6,889. And then the building construction fund was new this year, so that just kind of shows the fund balance this year is $3.1 million. General fund balance, when you look at the graph, you can see that the overall general fund has increased each of the past 4 years, so it's trending in the right direction. If you want to compare it to the budget, revenues are about $250,000 above what was budgeted for revenues, and expenses were about $180,000 above budget. So revenues and expenses were over budget, but ultimately the district is the best, about $50,000. The next page, food service fund balance. The goal of food service is really just to operate right about break even, not need any money from the general fund, not really to make any money either. Budget comparison, there was about revenue exceeded the budget by about $43,000, expenses about $7,000 over budget. So again, it went up about $6,000, so that's pretty good. Community service decreased this year. One thing I was going to point out about community service is there was no transfer from from the general fund for community service this year. Last year there's a $25,000 transfer. So actual expenses in community service were within $2,000 of fiscal year 11. Revenues were actually up about 16,000. So revenues were better than last year. Expenses both the same, but still functioning a little bit of a deficit. Some of that has to do with, I know this year's kind of got tied up in the fund balance penalty where the state kind of penalizes you for having a certain amount of fund balance. So I think the good news is the fund balance penalty is going away next year. So that should actually kind of help the district kind of get out of the negative fund balance for community service. So the next page is just general fund, shows reserved, unreserved. No real significant changes across years. Shows at the bottom how much money is in student activities at the end of the year. Also, the district has a commitment for severance, which just is money that the district is going to have to pay for future teacher retirements. The district kind of specifies that or sets that money aside so it knows it's going to have to pay that in the future. The next slide, community service balance. Again, this just shows the actual reserves for community service. No transfers in the current year. As you can see, community education is still a deficit, but improving. School readiness, not quite as good as it was last year. Kind of at the district's discretion whether or not you want to do transfers, or if you think future revenues are going to eventually cover that deficit. The next page, weighted average daily membership. This slide just kind of gives you a trend in student count over the past 5 years. So you can see if the district's losing students, gaining students. Actually looks like this is the first year in the last 4 that it actually picked up some students, so that's always a good sign. I don't know what that's going to mean going forward as far as student count, but the next page, property tax levy. I'm going to try to give a 5-year summary of what the levies are for the local property taxes. This fiscal year 12 levy was actually below both fiscal year 10 and 11. So not significant changes there either. The next page breaks out revenues and expenses for the general fund. You can see each of the last 5 years revenues has exceeded expenses. District's done a good job of increasing revenues when expenses are going to go up. The year expenses went down, revenues were down, so pretty good matching job there. Below that is the food service revenue and expense comparison. The next page simply shows revenues and expenses for community service and debt service. You can see for each of the last 5 years, expenses have exceeded revenues in community service and debt service. The district's been receiving all the money it needs to cover its debt payments. Page 11 simply is a breakup between the sources of revenue the district gets money from federal government, state, local taxpayers. Only moderate changes, a little bit more money coming from the state, less from the federal. That's just generally because the stimulus programs are over. It's kind of going back to the state's responsibility more than federal responsibility. Page 12, this breaks out kind of your expenses by whether it's salaries and wages, consulting, supplies, capital expenditures. Not really anything that jumps out at me. Purchase services